I remember when he heard the word that they'd bombed Pearl Harbor, Monroe said, Uncle Jesse, said, they don't need no bullets. Said, if I see somebody point a gun at me, somebody to die. He didn't. He went on through the war, was in the Normandy invasion, got wounded twice, and come back and lived a long life. Safe and sound.
We used to didn't have nothing much.
Uh,
Everything was rationed.
Yeah, immediately after the war started, the first thing happened, they quit making automobiles. There's no such thing as a 1942 or 43 model automobile. They didn't make them then. Well, there were a few made, but they were made for the military. And then after that, they started rationing commodities. Anything is imported, like coffee and stuff like that's imported. That was no more. You didn't get none of that. Stuff vital to the war effort: leather, rubber, sugar, all that. They immediately rationed that. And you got, like people today get food stamp. We used to get food stamp. Now I think it's something else, a debit card maybe. But each family, each person, child, adult, whatever, was allotted, depending on what the commodity was, one issue a year. And it might be a pair of shoes, it might be a sack of sugar, it might be tires for your car if you had one. There might even be gasoline for the car. But all things, all commodities like that was rationed.
You just got one pair of shoes every year, and you wore them. If they was wore out, you wore them anyway. You put cardboard inside of them, made a cardboard sole. Whatever you could do. And you had to make your own panties.
Yeah.
And put
Check
rubber in them to hold them up.
I don't mean that. Back then, that was before they used natural latex. They didn't have this artificial rubber like you got today in an inner tube. It was natural latex. That's another story. But anyway, it had a lot of stretch to it, and that's what they used in their undergarments for plastics.
And Mama made all of our clothes. She sewed. And there was 11 kids in my family.
You have to have a little bit of a lesson on history to understand where the Cold War comes from. The Cold War actually started almost immediately at the end of World War II, which was in August 1945. At the end of the war, when the war was over, Germany was divided among the United States, France, English, and Russia, divided into 4 zones. Russia wound up with Berlin, which is the capital of Germany. That was in the Russian zone. They called it East Germany, but that was a Russian possession. And not too long after that, well, actually I was there, it was during the Korean War, Russia started sword rattling, and they blockaded Berlin. It would let nobody have no access to Berlin. American troops, see, the city of Berlin was divided into 4 sections too. The city was. And they had the main gate going into the city of the Linderhof or something like that gate. They barricaded that thing, and it was called the Berlin Blockade. And of course, American still had troops there, but then they sent them over there by the tens of thousands, thinking that Russia was fixing to invade Europe again to take the whole German nation. And I was in Germany when the Berlin blockade took place. But anyway, that was the beginning of the Cold War, and it lasted come on until Ronald Reagan said, "Mr. Khrushchev, you take that wall down." That was basically the end of the Cold War. But that was throughout the Korean and Vietnam War. It was almost, Korean and Vietnam War. It was, what, I guess it lasted 50 years long. From the end of World War II till, I don't know when the wall fell, but it was. See, I went over at the end of World War II as occupation. And while I was there, the Berlin blockade took place. But in the meantime, all the occupation, what we did all the time was patrol the border, keep the border secure, you know. And one day, me and the master sergeant of mine was making our regular trips around the we had certain stations, you know, like I said a while ago, where that any important highway bridge or railhead, it was in our perimeter. We previously had already determined what explosive charge we need to blow it up. And this was all prepared and made up, ready to go, so you could do it in a minute's notice. One day we was up patrolling. This is along the Czechoslovakian border, which is now Croatia, but at that time it was Czechoslovakia. We was patrolling the border, checking all these stations, like we had to do every 3 or 4 days or whatever. We go over this little hill that's right smack dab on the Czechoslovakian border, and we top that hill and we almost run head on into a Jeep with 2 guys in it carrying the Russian flag, the hammer and sickle, the Russian flag. And Sergeant Nelson says, "Did you see that?" "Yes, Sergeant, I seen that." I said, "Well, catch him, what you waiting on?" So we whirled around and we chased them down. Running 2 or 3 miles, we finally caught them. And of course, we couldn't speak no Russian and they couldn't speak no English, but it was a whole bunch of jabber. They respected them weapons we had. So we took them, we had to escort them all the way to I put one of them, Sergeant Nelson did, put one of them me in the vehicle with one and the other in the vehicle with him. And we took them down to the 2nd Armored headquarters, it was probably 30 miles from there, and turned them over to them. And it turned out this guy was hollering, "Well, we're from the United Nations, we're from the United Nations." Well, we never did get to the end of it. We was worried for a long time that we was going to be in trouble, you know. And we never heard no more about it, but the fact is they was flying a Russian flag. If they would have been under the United Nations, they should have had a United Nations flag on it. It's clearly in our zone. So anyway, they got escorted down to somebody that could take care of them.